The bell above the cafe door chimed softly as another customer walked in, letting in the faint aroma of rain-soaked streets and the chill of early morning. At the counter, a young woman named Lena adjusted the grey scarf that covered half of her face, hiding the scar that had changed her life forever. Before the accident, Lena had been the kind of woman who lit up every room she walked into, confident, radiant, the kind of beauty that turned heads and warmed hearts. But all of that was before the crash, before the glass shattered across her cheek and left behind a reminder she couldn't wash away. For months, she refused to look in the mirror, avoided the stares of strangers, and buried her laughter under layers of silence. She worked the morning shifts now, when the cafe was quiet, when the city was still waking up, safe from the pitying eyes of people who whispered when they thought she couldn't hear. She told herself she was fine being invisible. But that morning fate had other plans. A man named Ethan walked in, handsome in a humble way, with kind eyes that carried stories of their own. He took a seat by the window, pulled out a small notebook and began to write. Lena noticed him not because he was striking, but because he wasn't like the others. He didn't rush, didn't stare, didn't demand. When she approached his table, he smiled, a smile that reached his eyes, and said, "You look like someone who's been through a lot. But you still look strong." His words hit her like a wave she wasn't ready for. She froze, unsure whether to thank him or walk away. "Just coffee?" she managed to say, keeping her tone neutral. "And maybe your name," he replied softly. She hesitated, then said, "Lena." It had been a long time since she'd said her name out loud with confidence. He nodded. "Beautiful name." "I'm Ethan." She poured his coffee, trying not to notice how his gaze didn't flinch even when the scarf slipped slightly, revealing the faint trace of her scar. For a moment she wanted to hide again, but something about him made her pause. That small kindness, that steady calm, made her heartbeat feel unfamiliar again, alive, nervous, hopeful. Over the next few weeks, Ethan kept coming back. Always the same time, always the same table. Sometimes he'd write, sometimes he'd talk to her, asking about her day, her dreams, her favorite songs. At first, Lena kept her distance. She'd been hurt before, not by love, but by the cruelty of people who couldn't see past the surface. But Ethan never asked about her scarf, never stared too long. Instead, he'd talk about simple things, the smell of rain, the sound of morning birds, the taste of old memories, and somehow, without even realizing it, Lena began to smile again. It wasn't the wide, carefree smile she used to wear, but it was real. One day, while she wiped down the counter, Ethan asked, "Do you ever miss the person you used to be?" The question caught her off guard. Her hand froze mid-motion. "Every day," she whispered. "But she's gone now." Ethan shook his head. "No, she's not gone. She's just hiding until someone reminds her. She's still there." Lena laughed. Softly, a sad, fragile laugh. "You think it's that simple?" "No," he said, "but I think it's worth trying." After that day, things changed. Lena found herself waiting for him, adjusting her scarf less, letting a few strands of hair fall freely. When he complimented her smile, she didn't hide. When he asked to walk her home after her shift, she said yes. The world around her began to soften again. The laughter of customers didn't sting. The mirror in the cafe bathroom didn't frighten her. She started to see herself not as broken, but as surviving. One rainy evening, as thunder rumbled outside, Ethan stayed until closing time. The cafe lights glowed warm against the storm. He helped her stack chairs, wiped tables, and told her about how he used to be a photographer before losing everything in a house fire. "The fire took all my work," he said. "But it gave me something back, perspective. Sometimes the most beautiful things are the ones that survive the storm." Lena looked at him quietly, her eyes reflecting the golden light. "And sometimes the storm never really ends," she murmured. "Maybe not," he said, smiling gently. "But maybe it teaches us to dance in the rain." That night, when she went home, she took off her scarf for the first time in months and looked at her reflection. The scar was still there, jagged, uneven, imperfect, but she didn't flinch. For the first time, she didn't see it as the end of her beauty, but as the mark of her survival. She thought of Ethan's words, his eyes, his warmth, and something deep inside her shifted. The next morning, when she walked into the cafe, she left the scarf behind. The morning sun streamed gently through the cafe windows, painting the walls in shades of gold. The familiar bell above the door chimed as Lena walked in. Only this time, she wasn't hiding behind her scarf. The cool air brushed softly against her skin, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she didn't shrink from it. The regulars who came in for their morning coffee looked up in quiet surprise, noticing something different about her. It wasn't just her face they saw, it was her courage, her quiet transformation, the way her eyes seemed to hold a new kind of light. She felt it too, the weight of fear lifting little by little with every step she took. When Ethan walked in a few minutes later, carrying his usual notebook, he stopped dead in his tracks. His expression wasn't shock, it was awe. His eyes softened, and a small, proud smile curved on his lips. "You're glowing," he said softly. Lena blushed, unsure how to respond. "I decided I was tired of hiding," she murmured. "Good," Ethan replied, his voice almost a whisper. "The world's been missing out." His words sank deep, and for a moment she forgot the world around them, the coffee machine's hum, the chatter of customers, the soft music in the background. There was only the way he looked at her, not with pity, not with curiosity, but with a kind of reverence that made her feel seen, truly seen. That day they talked longer than usual. Ethan told her about the photographs he used to take, portraits of people in motion, faces full of stories, and how he'd stopped after the fire destroyed his studio. "I thought I'd lost my vision," he said, staring at the steam rising from his coffee. "But then I met you." Lena looked up, startled. "Me? Yes," he said, "because you remind me that beauty isn't something we capture, it's something we feel." The words made her chest tighten in a way she hadn't felt in years. She wanted to tell him everything, the fear, the shame, the nights she cried herself to sleep, but she couldn't, not yet. Instead, she smiled faintly and said, "Maybe you'll find your vision again someday." He smiled back. "Maybe I already have." As days turned into weeks, the cafe became their small universe. Customers noticed the subtle change in Lena, the way she moved with newfound ease, the quiet laughter that sometimes escaped her lips when Ethan was around. She began baking again, experimenting with pastries she hadn't made since before the accident. Her hands, once trembling with insecurity, now created warmth and flavor that drew people in. Ethan often sat by the counter, sketching or writing while she worked. Sometimes he'd glance up and find her looking at him, and they'd share a silent smile that said everything words couldn't. One afternoon, as golden light spilled through the windows, Ethan brought his camera, a simple, old-fashioned one he'd repaired himself. "I want to take your picture," he said gently. Lena froze, her breath catching. "No, Ethan, I can't." He set the camera down carefully, his gaze steady. "You don't have to pose. You don't have to hide or smile or pretend. I just want to capture you the way I see you." Her heart raced. No one had ever said that to her before. "And what do you see?" she whispered. "Strength," he said softly. "Grace. A woman who didn't let pain define her." For a long moment, she stood silent, torn between fear and trust. Then slowly she nodded. Ethan lifted the camera, his movements gentle, respectful. The shutter clicked once, just once, but that single sound felt like a heartbeat breaking free. Lena exhaled, realizing she hadn't been breathing. Ethan smiled. "Perfect," he said. She shook her head. "I doubt that." "You'd be surprised," he replied. Later that evening, he showed her the photo. In the dim cafe light, Lena looked at the screen and gasped. The image wasn't of a scarred face or a broken woman. It was of a survivor, eyes steady, lips soft, light glowing across her features in a way that made her look almost ethereal. She didn't see pain. She saw resilience. She didn't see what was lost. She saw what remained. Tears welled up in her eyes. "That's not me," she whispered. Ethan touched her hand gently. "It is. It's who you've always been." From that day forward, something changed in her heart. She started talking about her dreams again. The little bakery she once wanted to open, the recipes she'd written years ago, the places she wanted to travel. Ethan listened, encouraged her, reminded her that scars weren't endings, they were beginnings written in flesh. And slowly, Lena began to believe him. One evening after closing time, as rain drizzled against the windows and the cafe glowed with soft amber light, Ethan stayed behind to help her clean up. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with the quiet rhythm of shared moments. "You know," Lena said suddenly, "for a long time, I thought love was only for beautiful people." Ethan looked up from wiping the counter. "And what changed your mind?" She smiled, her voice trembling. "You did." He took a slow breath, stepped closer, and brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "Lena," he said, "beauty fades. But the light in your soul, that's forever." Her eyes shimmered, with tears as she whispered, "What if I'm still scared?" He smiled. "Then I'll stay until you're not." The rain grew heavier, tapping gently on the windows, like the world was listening to their hearts unfold. For the first time, she didn't pull away when he reached for her hand. She felt the warmth of his fingers, steady and sure, grounding her in a way she hadn't known she needed. Weeks later, Ethan's photo of Lena was displayed in a small local exhibition. He didn't tell her beforehand, he just invited her to come. Nervous and unsure, Lena walked into the little gallery, her heart pounding. And there it was, the picture of her behind the cafe counter, light falling across her scar like a gentle whisper of hope. The caption below it read, "She hid her face until she found herself." People stood around, admiring the photograph, talking not about the scar, but about the strength in her eyes. Lena's throat tightened as tears blurred her vision. Ethan appeared beside her, quiet and calm. "You did this," she said, her voice shaking. "No," he whispered, "you did." She turned to him, eyes glistening. "Ethan, why me?" He smiled, brushing a tear from her cheek. "Because you showed me that real beauty isn't something we fix, it's something we learn to love, even when it's broken." That night, as they walked home beneath a starlit sky, Lena finally felt free. She no longer hid her face when the wind blew, no longer flinched from her reflection. She was whole, not because someone fixed her, but because someone reminded her that she was never broken. And as she looked at Ethan walking beside her, she realized that sometimes love doesn't come to complete you. It comes to show you that you were complete all along.